Part of growing an online business means that you're wanting to grab attention. You want to get the attention of those people that are going to be the perfect fit for your business, people you can help, people that are your ideal audience, people that are your ideal clients and customers. You want to get their attention so that they can see what you offer, so that they can become part of your world and part of your community. But how do you actually get that attention? Now, there's a lot of advice out there about getting attention to your business, but not all advice is ideal. Sometimes people are just giving you these hacks and tricks that might get you a little bit of attention, or, will get you excited because at first it gets you some attention and, something might go viral or blow up. But the problem with some of these tricks and tactics is you might attract the wrong kind of people. You might not get long-lasting attention, but it might just be fleeting. And it's just more about making you feel good because, oh, look, my numbers went up for a minute, and you get this sort of buzz out of that. But when it comes to creating attention for the long term, you need to have a bit more strategy behind it and be really thinking about creating more of a consistent flow of attraction. And also establishing a strong brand identity and not just using these cheap tactics where you're just using bright colors and flashy things to go, oh, look at me, and trying to make yourself stand out, because it's not really great for the long term. You're not establishing this strong brand identity. You're not creating more connection. You're just like, oh, pick me, and trying to have the flashy colors on and things like that. So getting attention isn't just about being the brightest and boldest. Getting attention is also about really hitting to people's hearts. So when they see your stuff, it really resonates with them. So when they come across your brand, they're like, oh, this is something I'm really interested in. You're trying to be captivating, not just bright and attention grabbing. So one of the first mistakes when it comes to getting attention is taking all that advice about needing to be brighter and louder. You'll see people who say things like, oh, you should put behind your profile picture a really bright color, like a really bright, bold pink and things like that. And if that suits your branding, well, that's fine, because it's an introduction to what your brand is. If someone sees that and it does catch their attention and they look and get to know your brand, and that really represents your brand being bright and colorful and cheery, and it really does work, well, you're capturing the attention of the right kind of person that's looking for that. And then there's also that consistency. If they saw that and that's the feeling they got from that, and then they continue to see the rest of your brand and that feeling continues to go through. And so you don't just grab their attention, but you're holding it, because this is what I actually thought it was. Whereas if you use this bright, bold color and then someone goes to your stuff and it's all this real gentle, soft things, there's a real disconnect there. And so it's not a good tactic if it doesn't actually suit your branding. So it's not something you should do because, oh, well, by doing that, I'll get attention. If I use these really big, bold colors and, the big text and things like that, so I stand out. When someone's scrolling through things, they'll see mine and it will stand out from everything else. It's not just trying to be the loudest and brightest. These sort of things are very cheap and gimmicky. It's like you're just trying to use a real cheap trick to try and grab attention, like just putting up a flashing sign. Well, that might grab someone's attention for a moment and they'll be like, oh, what's that? It's not grabbing long-term attention, which is what we really want. So when it comes to things like your brand fonts and colors and that, don't just try and do what's going to stand out, but rather make sure you keep a consistent style and feeling to your brand, and really consider what it communicates about your brand. Don't use a color just because it's going to stand out, but use a color because it communicates something about your brand. So secret number one for getting attention is being different, not louder. So we don't want to be the brightest and loudest, but we just want to find a way to be different. And the way that you're different can vary depending on your own brand. But it's about finding a way that you can be distinct. How can you stand out in your own industry? So it's about doing some research, taking the time to look at what everyone else in your industry is doing, what they're creating, what the overall feeling and look is, and think, well, how could I do things a little bit differently? Maybe you've got a different message, maybe you've got a different style, maybe you use a different type of color palette, maybe you've just got a different vibe and feeling to it. Just think about how you could bring something a bit different, because then that's going to stand out without it having to be super loud and bright. It just stands out because it's different. Now, there's something called the Van Rostov effect. So this is when many similar things are presented, the one that differs from the rest is most likely going to be remembered. So if you want your graphics to be memorable and stand out, they need to be different. So find some way to be unique. And as I said, that doesn't mean that you have to be the brightest and loudest. It's just about finding a way to do things a little bit differently. It's also really important to be aware of your audience aesthetic. What actually appeals to your particular audience? What do they like? What resonates with them? Get to know them and the styles they like, because you don't want to use something just because you think it's going to be attention grabbing or it's going to be super different if it doesn't actually appeal to the people that you're trying to attract. You want a style and aesthetic that they love, something that they're like, oh, I love this, I adore this. Almost consider it like, would they want my brand in their home? Is it going to suit their own aesthetic? Is that something that they would love so much that they're like, oh, I want a piece of this. This is so me. I absolutely love it. Now, tip number 2 is consistency is key. Now, I've talked about this before, how important it is to be consistent with your branding. But part of this is the fact that people prefer familiarity. They like when things feel familiar, which means you're going to want to be presenting your brand over and over again to them and have that same feeling and style. If you're constantly trying to chop and change and do whatever the latest trick or hack is that's going to make you stand out, then it actually makes you less consistent, because you're trying all these different types of things, and so you've not got this consistent feeling and style and way you do things, and it doesn't make you familiar then. When you keep doing a similar kind of style, you keep putting forth things in a certain kind of way, and you've got a certain kind of look, if you keep exposing people to that, that starts to really stand out and attract people, because they're like, hang on, I've seen that before, and it starts to become familiar and recognizable, and that's going to attract them. Think about some of the people that you've come across. Maybe you've seen some of their videos several times, but they've got a similar style, or maybe you've just been exposed to parts of their brand over and over again, and it started to just click with you. You're like, hang on, this is familiar, and it starts to attract you. You want to know, well, who is this person? What are they about? Because I keep seeing them. And so you go and investigate and learn more. And because they were really consistent, you recognize it and you're like, hang on, I've seen their stuff before. And because they kept putting it forth in that same way and kept exposing you to it, you became attracted to it. Number 2 is making your values really clear. People are going to be attracted to businesses that have similar values to themselves. So make your values really clear. Put them front and center. Talk about them. Actually act on them. Make it really a big part of what your brand is all about, because people are going to resonate with those values and it's going to really attract them. When they stumble upon your brand and like, oh yes, finally a brand that, you know, feels this certain way about this certain thing, and they're going to feel really attracted to that. So while it's not a visual thing like picking a particular color or anything like that, values are something that can really attract people, especially if they feel particularly strongly about something and they're seeing this brand that is talking about it and acting on it, and they're like, oh, this is what I'm looking for, and you know, this is a brand that is really something that I want. So making your brand values shine through is really going to attract the right kind of people. So what is the formula for attracting? Well, it's being different, being consistent, and having strong brand values. When you have those 3 things happening, you will start to create more and more attraction to your brand. It's not about having that bright color behind your profile picture. It's more about having a strong, consistent brand that has strong values and it has something about it that's a bit different. That is what is going to stand out to people and really attract them to your brand. So I hope you found this video helpful and it got you thinking a bit more about how you can create a brand that really attracts the right kind of people, and you know, it's not just flashy little tricks and hacks, but creating this strong, long-lasting brand that attracts your dream audience, clients, and customers. So if you'd like to learn more about branding, graphic design, and creativity, then be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.